Hello, everyone. Welcome back to IL Soy Advisor. I'm Kelsey Litchfield, coming to you from dry West Central Illinois. I don't know if you guys saw a drought map from last week. Another one's getting released this morning, but there's a pocket near me that's abnormally dry. I'm curious to see if that is going to expand a little bit. The tops are cracked. We could really use a good solid rain here in my neck of the woods right now. Calling for storms tonight, so we'll see if we get the 10th of an inch, or I heard this morning some areas are calling for an inch. So we'll see what happens. But before we get to that, let's take a quick look at the latest USDA planting progress. Again, I hear people are wondering where this good to excellent corn crop is throughout the state of Illinois, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But real quick, as of June 9th, soybean planting has reached 87%, with 69% emerged, just shy above the 5-year average of 71%. Currently, the condition of the soybean crop is rated 56% good, 13% excellent, 26% fair, and 4% poor. Turning to corn, planting is nearly complete, according to them, at 93%. Maybe Southern Illinois begs to differ. 87% of corn now emerged. Corn condition ratings are as follows: 56% good, 18% excellent, 22% fair, and 4% poor. Winter wheat, if you have a report there, harvest, we reported it begun last week. They're calling it 6% now. Winter wheat crop conditions, 61% rated good, 16% excellence, while 22% is fair. I already talked about the drought monitor, so we'll take a look at that once it comes out later this morning. Might throw it up on here during the video podcast. We'll keep an eye on that. So let's go around. Let's talk about what's going out in the fields and crop conditions. I know Stephanie wrote a blog earlier this week calling crop scouting during the awkward junior high phase. And I have to agree with her. When I was little, I would pretend that the plants were babies and then they were like little toddlers, and they'd grow up to be in junior high. So I have this in my mind that it also is the awkward junior high phase for these crops. So tell us what you're seeing out in the fields. Real quick, Shelby, let's start with you this week.
Good morning, everybody. Over here in East Central Illinois, we're moving along very nicely. I was telling everybody the other day that it was on Wednesday, when it was such a beautiful day, Tuesday and Wednesday, that we have every aspect of farming going on. We have first time planting for corn and soybeans. We have second time planting for corn and soybeans. Some third replant for soybeans. We've got rotary hoeing, we've got anhydrous going on, side dressing, and applications of chemicals on corn and soybeans. So I mean, it's a rodeo around here. Everybody's going every which direction, and some guys are just not sure what to do. They're trying to move forward and do what's right, but yet it's difficult. Mother Nature's been tough. So we received a half inch of rain last week, and we've been dry since. It's getting hot, and you said, Kelsey, I hope we receive some rain tonight. We could really use a nice half inch or an inch going into this heat wave that we're headed into. But overall, I mean, the crops that are in the ground and got established, things are looking pretty darn good. Aside if you can blind yourself from the wet holes in the replant areas. Corn has really taken off, and soybeans are in that ugly, awkward stage that they're just slow to get going, but they're coming around well. So I think all in all, I mean, we're headed in the right direction right now. If we can make it through this heat wave, I'm okay with a little bit of heat, because we can make our roots go down, because our roots have been on the topsoil because we've had a lot of moisture. They haven't had a reason to go down, and this will encourage the roots to go downward, find that nitrogen that's down there as well, and get some establishment. So around and around, I've seen some wheat that is coming on really quickly, and there's not a lot of that here in this area, but there are a few fields that it's moving quickly. So it might be before 4th of July that some of those guys could enjoy their holiday this year instead of being in the wheat fields. So, but overall, yeah, I'm okay with where we are right now.
Yeah, speaking of wheat, Kelly, you want to give us what's going on in Southern Illinois with wheat right now and everything else that you guys got going on?
Wheat harvest is wrapping up. I'd say we're 75% complete. A lot of guys are completely done. Some guys are a half to 75%. So overall, you see more harvested wheat fields than you do unharvested. Yields 80 to 100 bushel an acre. Lots of down wheat. Test weights 47 to 60. Lots of 54, 55, 56 is poor test weights. A lot of that can be traced back to down wheat and or planting date on specific varieties from certain companies. Um, so overall, wheat harvest is not bad. Most guys are planting beans right behind the combine because um, for reasons that nobody can understand, the wheat straw ground is drier than anything else. Um, so having said that, we're trying to finish planting soybeans, trying to finish planting corn for the first time, replanting lots of soybeans and lots of corn due to slugs. Saw field yesterday, V4, V5, V6 corn, the slugs were mowing it off. Some of the slugs were as big as my pinky. Look like snakes. Just incredible how big they are. Um, so a lot of the cover crop ground, guys have give up and took a disc to it because some of it's been replanted twice. So not the year to be a cover cropper. Corn growth stage, anywhere from just going in the ground to tasseling. Soybeans, again, not planted to we've got a lot of beans that are getting to be shin high on me, maybe a little taller. Um, lots of fields that are bloomed. Um, a lot of anhydrous going on. Um, Retail can't keep up. There's fields that have gotten skipped on burn downs, skipped on their first spray. There's fields that you drive around that you can tell are planted that have never been sprayed. So you can, it's got chest high water hemp and you can see the corn in it. Just, yeah, somebody said circus. I don't know that that's a good rodeo or whatever. I have another word for it, but I won't say it here.
This is definitely not your first rodeo, that's for sure.
No, I mean, but this is kind of, we're going to see, like I said, we're seeing wheat harvested, beans planted, corn planted, replanted, spraying, anhydrous going on. I mean, and a lot of guys will get close to being done by the end of the week if they aren't already. So the only good news, I say only good news. I mean, the best news is that wheat harvest is almost done and it's not even the 15th of June. So we're a good, we should probably only be starting wheat harvest now instead of finishing it.
Are farmers taking prevent plant around you, or they have?
Yeah, there's some that have cover crop guys. A lot of those have taken prevent plant if they hadn't already tried to plant. Um, the economics of prevent plant. Some guys that had intended to take prevent plant switched those acres from beans from corn to beans because the money's just not there. You got to plant it. You're better off to plant it than you were to take the prevent plant. So um, there's I don't know. We'll see. We'll see the full effect of what's happened uh, here in the probably by July 1st we'll know exactly where everything's at. The crop overall in general, I mean the guys that planted at the end of March, 1st of April when it was too dry, that was when you should have went to the field. Like I said, corn that's starting to tassel, beautiful color. I mean, still got holes in it from all the rain. Um, Ground's still not working right. A lot of it smells like a sewer. Um, it's just a mess. But just an interesting side note, I've got some help from Central Illinois down here, and continue to question the last 3 days how we managed to farm down here. So I enjoy it.
Makes for some interesting conversations, I bet.
Yeah, you guys don't have one square flat field. I said, no. Why would we?
Yeah. Thanks for the report, Kelly. We'll touch base on some of those points later on. Drew, let's head over to you, and then Eric will round it up with your concerns that you're seeing out in the field.
After Kelly, I sound I'm gonna sound like a basket of joy. So I mean, our territory has been done for some time. There's still stragglers that are getting wrapped up, but for the most part, we're off to the races. Everything is in that kind of that ugly duckling phase through corn and soybeans. A lot of post is going on right now, so it's going to be interesting to see now that we're getting to some heat. How that heat's going to affect some of these post applications, and if we're going to see a whole lot of crop response. A lot of this crop is transitioning into the root system, which is what's giving it the ugly phase. I will say I've been in 2 fields now with really spotty yellow areas of beans that didn't make sense, and when we started digging them, they had just not nodulated hardly at all. And it was kind of really interesting to see that. I pulled some soil samples. We're submitting some on one field that had manuring just to monitor that to see if we can see any difference between the green areas to the other, if there was an over application of manure or what have you. But the other field had not. So we're wondering if that's tracing back to compaction and a few of those different things. But that's kind of an intriguing part as we're moving off of the seed and we're moving into the root system. We're starting to see a few different nutrient deficiencies show up. Kind of to also to everyone's point, a lot of herbicide applications are going on. I would reinforce just take some time to get on the same page with who you're doing your mixing, who's doing your spraying. 5 minutes of conversation in several of these service calls that I've been on would have saved a lot of agony on this side and a lot of questions and a lot of frustration. So there's a lot of that going on. We're not as rushed as Southern Illinois, but we're still trying to get a lot done in a hurry. It is amazing what soybeans will grow back through. A lot of this hail damage that we saw, fields that were mowed off. I mean, they're coming back through. They've got 2 to 3 branches coming off of that main stem where that meristem was broken off, and they're looking like they're going to be pretty good. They're going to take a little bit longer to get to canopy, it seems, but yeah. Outside of that, I think Shelby, I think last week you had asked again about cutworm, and we're still seeing it now. We just had another flare up around Peoria. In organics in the last week, all of a sudden out of nowhere, it doesn't really match up with any flights. But last weekend, I started getting pictures of several cornfields that were mowed off again in organics. So they're still seeming to linger around in those management practices. But I mean, I would say wide scale, we're not seeing them. It's just kind of isolated in certain patterns like that. But yeah, outside of that, we're pretty business as usual.
That's good to hear. All right, Eric, let's hear what's going on in your neck of the woods.
Well, I would say that we are getting close to wrapping everything up. I mean, this week we've still had some planting operations, even guys still trying to plant for the first time, some of those late bloomers, and still trying to get some burn down done. But I think we finally got all that wrapped up. Definitely a lot of side dress, a lot of post herbicide applications going on in our area. And like everybody else has mentioned with, the root development, that's some of those key things besides outside of maybe say herbicide misapplication. That's a lot of what I've been looking at and concerned about is just root development. And it seems like areas where I'm seeing where there's issues with root development is because they planted into less than ideal conditions. We either slabbed it up from the field cultivator or from tillage just in general, or else we had some sidewall compaction from the planter. Last Thursday, I was in a cornfield right after we got done with this, the podcast from last week, and we're looking at a cornfield, and you would have thought that all the low areas or the yellow areas of the field were the low areas of the field where there's maybe some denitrification, but it was actually the exact opposite. It was an inverse, but it was because the little bit higher portions of the ground was drying out quicker, and there was extreme root, tomahawk roots, sidewall compaction, and those areas were actually running out of moisture. I hate to say it this year, but it was running out of moisture and causing those nitrogen deficiencies to maybe show up quicker just because nutrients weren't in soil solution. And the lower areas were actually hanging on just a little bit longer. But I would suspect as we go through this weekend, that whole field is probably going to be in trouble. So if you're wondering at all what you're seeing above ground, this is going to be definitely the year I'm going to encourage everybody to get and look below ground, because likely the story is going to be told below ground, just what's going on just because of all the challenging conditions. Everybody's kind of mentioned wheat. I have yet to see through our area, even down to the I-70 corridor, if there's been any wheat harvest, but I suspect maybe there has, but I just haven't seen any in my travels. And we've got corn all the way from probably V3, V4 to like not quite as far along as Southern Illinois, but we've definitely chest high, looking at V8, V10 corn probably. So fungicide season is going to be here before you know it.
That was going to be one of my questions for you guys today. But before I get to that, anything I know, Eric, you briefly mentioned herbicide misapplication. From an agri-retailer standpoint, any reminders you want to throw out there?
Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of the herbicide labels have got wind advisories or wind restrictions. And so I think if everybody would kind of have an aha moment, or the light bulb might go off about, just how low some of these wind advisories are. Just for instance, clethodim or selected, a lot of people use to control volunteer corn. It's got a max wind speed of 10 mile an hour. How many less than 10 mile an hour wind days have we had this year? Not too many. And there's a lot of bean applications being made. So that's one thing that I've been seeing quite a bit of is drift from clethodim going on to corn, and then the first as much as first 12 rows of a cornfield to be affected by it. So some of these things are real. The information's on the chemical labels. It's on there for a reason. And I know sometimes you can bend the rules, but this doesn't seem to be the year you can bend the rules. And I'm not encouraging anybody to bend the rules either. The other thing is with, just as Drew said, having those first, having some communications with your retailer or whoever might be doing your spraying can cause, could potentially avoid a lot of things. We also had some tank contamination issues we were working through this week too that is going to be pretty ugly, and I'm not sure what the fate of some soybeans are that got affected by some corn chemicals. So, but I don't know. Every year's different.
And I saw from IFCA, from KJ, the dicamba cutoff was this week, correct, too?
Yes, that's correct. It was June 12th, and yeah, so that was yesterday. So even with the wind conditions and the temperature, in this, at least in my part of the area, got up to about 88, maybe 89 yesterday. So, I mean, we were well above. Yesterday wasn't a dicamba day anyway. So actually, maybe the cutoff would have been June 11th for us, at least in this part of the state.
Thanks, Eric. Real quick, I do want to talk about fungicide. Talking about the optimal time to spray corn and soybeans, any other considerations as farmers are starting to get into that mindset? And probably Kelly down in Southern Illinois, it's coming for you quicker than anyone else. But just an open roundtable of what you want to remind farmers when it comes to spraying fungicide this growing season.
I can kind of kick this off. So I actually just sent in an article, a blog post yesterday, kind of talking around this. But we've so through Beck's PFR, we've got a lot of data to kind of talk about both of these sides, but kind of focus it on soybeans. But it's kind of 2 points on it. First of all, on beans, R3 is as an optimal time. So that just kind of small pod in the top 4 nodes of the plant. But we see that's the best response to fungicide application is at that time frame. So we can actually make it almost profitable just by hitting that growth stage correct. I know that's very tough to do, especially with an ag retail. I'm not trying to throw another curve wrench in or trying to hit an exact time frame, but we do see that. And then secondly, we actually have some data, 1-year data on planting or on fungicide application by planting date. So we do still see that even if that is a later planted soybean, so say a May 18th or 20th planted versus April 20th planted, we still see that ROI or that response from the fungicide application is a positive ROI. That's at least, like I said, that's preliminary 1 year data. We'll kind of keep building on that, but it does give us something to kind of look at. Overall yields, we're still seeing a little bit of a drag in the later planting, just due to that, but we are still seeing that the fungicide application is a key part of that.
I'll just add, or go ahead, Kelly. You started for me.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say that, there's going to be a lot of variants of crop height, especially, or crop stages out in corn, especially in corn. And, while, we may pull the trigger and, have a field applied or whatever, and there's going to be different stages of corn. So I guess just work with whoever's doing your spraying to understand what's in the tank. With the retail organization I'm associated with, we use an NIS type of adjuvant with our fungicide applications, and we see a lot of benefits from it. But just want to remind growers that you can't use any NIS type of adjuvant because we can cause arrested ear syndrome that was first discovered back in the early 2000s with a product called Headline Amp because of using regular NIS. But what it was discovered is that there's 2 compounds that are in most NIS formulations that are responsible for it. Still don't really understand how and why, but we have at least been able to identify those 2 compounds. So those 2 compounds are APE and NPE. So just make sure that whatever adjuvants we're using, especially if, we got variant of crop stages, or, maybe say for some reason we're going pre-VT, that make sure we're using the proper adjuvants with our fungicide applications. That would be, kind of my one thing that I would stress with growers this year, especially as we're looking at corn.
I was just gonna say that the corn that's at VT probably is going to get sprayed here pretty quick. My preferred timing is right at tassel emergence. At the majority of the field is at that point. We're going to pull the trigger, keep the adjuvants out, keep the foo-foo juice and magic dust and all the other crap they want to sell you out of there. You don't need it. It doesn't make any difference. Who cares? Save your money. If you're gonna have 2 bullets, use your big bullet right now, but make sure your second bullet has the capability to protect against southern rust, because the early corn, not so much worried about it, but all this later corn, we are going to probably run into a southern rust situation. I can envision 2016. So use your big bullet now, but save your southern rust bullet for later. That's just, I think that's where we're at on soybeans. We've got probably a year before we have to worry about spraying soybeans with fungicide. So we'll talk about that when we get there.
I will say through Northern Illinois, just walk out there and look at the beans too. There's a lot of these beans that aren't very big that are flowering. So, it does seem like our nodes are maybe stacked a little bit more up this way than we might normally see them. So just kind of watch that. And then I do believe they did confirm the tar spot, at least my counterpart in Iowa told me they did confirm tar spot so far there. So we could be ramping up for a potential late season joyful event.
That was going to be my next question. I think I heard on a podcast this morning, Central Iowa and then maybe in Indiana. I'm not sure where in Indiana that tar spot has been reported. So, and any comments there when scouting for tar spot, what to look for? Many areas have had excessive rainfall, and it seems like that's the conditions that it likes to be in.
Can we back up for just a second? Because I want to add in something there that we're seeing gray leaf spot already on a lot of corn. And to Drew's point, looked at a field yesterday that farmer was upset, chemical damage, blah blah blah. The beans that looked chemical damage had 11 nodes, and the ones that looked beautiful and lush had 9 nodes. So plant height, back to your point, Drew, plant height and everything else is no indication of growth stage. Never is, never has been, never will be, but yet we seem to think taller beans are better. So yeah, pay attention to growth stage on everything. So sorry about that.
Oh, you had a blog post on that last year that I remember too. So good reminder of that. Anything else?
We did notice some iron deficiency chlorosis in soybeans this week as well. We had a couple calls on some yellowing soybeans and finding that out in soybean fields, caused by wet soils, different conditions, but probably more compaction than anything at this point. You're tying up those nutrients and not allowing those roots to grow, so tying things up. So that was one thing we did notice in soybeans.
One other thing I'll throw in here too is we've got some unscrupulous salespeople out here pulling tissue tests on yellow crops, telling guys that they need more nitrogen, more this, more that. And back to Eric's point, dig the plant. Most of these don't have root systems. They're planted in mud. No matter what you spray on them at this point, it's not going to make a difference. They're going to have rain every week to make anything. So the tissue test isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Yeah, and I will just say with, around fungicide applications, around disease, to Kelly's point too, is it seems like tar spot is quickly taking the conversation of diseases and heading into fungicide season. But we can't forget about gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight, the rust, even the frog eye and stuff. We have those diseases year in and year out, and we need to be focused on controlling those. And if we have tar spot, then manage tar spot. And then also, it'll happen this year, and it's happened in the past. Somebody will be out scouting, they'll see black spots on a corn leaf and think it's tar spot, and they'll go to the countryside with it. Make sure you properly identify it, because one thing a lot of times I'll see is that maybe it's fly scat, and that rubs off with a little bit of, say you pour a little bit of water on the leaf and you can rub it. That rubs off. Tar spot does not, and it's through the leaf. So just kind of remind everybody how to identify tar spot. And think back to your rotations and stuff. And so if you had issues in, let's see here, 22, likely, maybe those fields have been rotated and now we're back to those fields. So if you had, think about your rotation patterns too. That I'm not saying that you couldn't have got it from a neighbor or, because this stuff does move with the residue and things like that. So just remember that, maybe think about rotations, proper identification, and don't forget about the diseases we have year in and year out.
And just to put a little plug in, I'm actually going to drop off some samples to the U of I plant clinic today for some diagnostics on some potential rhizoc early on damping off in soybeans. They're a fantastic resource to have right here in the state. If you have any questions, I think it's like $25. Send in a sample. I mean, they're pretty good turnaround on that. So just a little reminder that we do have those resources.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great reminder. Thanks, Drew. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here for the week. Lots of good points to share today. Lots to think on as you're scouting throughout the next week. And we'll come back here, I think, next Tuesday for a quick podcast before Illinois Soybean Association. We have our first field day next Thursday, so we'll push the podcast to then. But thank you all. Always appreciate you coming in, telling us what's going around in your region. I think it gives a nicer picture to what's actually going on. You think what's going on from your area, but until you expand and see what's going on in different areas, you really see, like I tell some people that Southern Illinois has been in rough shape this year and they don't believe me. It's like, well, get outside your zone, and start talking to people. So
to be totally fair, we're always in rough shape compared to the rest of the state, but I mean, we're rougher than usual.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's always good to know what's happening outside of our county. So thank you all. We'll talk next week, and we'll go from there. Thanks all.